that. Now we're looking at scientifically. So when people are on this high carbohydrate diet, too much glucose is released. The body can only deal with so much, so it has to be stored in the fat cells. Now, Dr. Robert Atkins knew that science. So he looked at himself getting this, what we call spare tire. So he decided to do an experiment on himself. He decided to stop all carbohydrates. What did he eat? He ate a lot of vegetables, okay? And a lot of people don't realise that, with the exclusion of the potato. So he was eating a lot of fibre. And he knew also that the gastrointestinal tract needed to move through the next two food groups. He ate a lot of meat, butter, cream, cheese, eggs. So there was his protein. And meat, butter, cream, cheese, eggs was also supplying another food group, which was fat. Remember, he just experimented on himself. Few things happened. His weight just fell off. Why? Well, he's not supplying the quick-release glucose stores, and so his liver has to start breaking down his fat stores. It's called gluconeogenesis, creating glucose from the fat stores. He was never hungry. Why? Because these are the three food groups that keep the food in the stomach longer. Fibre binds up the glucose and it slowly releases it. Protein, well, protein's broken down specifically in the stomach. And fat, it coats the food a little bit, so it takes a little bit longer to break down. That's good news, because it means we don't have to be eating all day long. We can eat and forget about food for the next 5 or 6 hours. He had heaps of energy. Where's he getting his energy from if he's not giving this quick-release glucose foods? Well, as I mentioned, his liver breaks down his fat stores to give him the glucose, and his liver has the ability to break down protein and fat to give glucose. He had lots of energy, weight's falling off him, and he's never hungry. Has he found the perfect diet? Well, the 11 million people that it has been estimated has been helped by his diet agree. Number 1 on the New York Times best-selling list was 4 years running. You know what this information says? This man demands us to have a look, because I want to know why. So when I had a man come to our program who said to me, he was a businessman, he said, I know you're not going to like it, Barbara, but I go so well on the Atkins diet. Now, if I'm worth anything, what am I going to do? Listen. I'm going to listen. Because this is his body. It works well. I was interested. And I was interested in a way that I'd never been interested before. Because people used to say, oh, that Atkins diet's terrible. Meat, butter, cream, cheese, eggs. So I thought, oh, well, I'm not too interested in that. But I became interested in this man. And it's quite a long story. It's a fascinating story how eventually the book came across my path. I opened it. I could not put it down. I read it in 2 days. His science is correct. There's the science. So when Atkins was popular, I used to give a meeting called Dr. Atkins' Missing Link. And his missing link really is the vegetarian protein. I'm jumping ahead. Let's have a look at what he found. So he started to put some of his patients on this. Oh, they were so happy they can eat anything they can't usually eat on a weight loss diet. Weight's falling off them. Within 6 months, he had all his patients on the diet. After a year, a few things started happening which he was unprepared for. His cancer patients were going into remission. How so? Do you remember what cancer cells are consuming? 15 times the glucose of any other cell. This is a low glucose diet. His diabetics were coming off their medication. This is type 1 and type 2 diabetics. Absolutely there was weight loss. You might be surprised at the next one. His patients on with high cholesterol levels came back to normal. And what are they eating? Meat, butter, cream, cheese, eggs. What are people told if they want to get their cholesterol levels down? What have they got to stop? Meat, butter, cream, cheese, eggs. Is that right? He's scratching his head. He only did it for weight loss. And that's why he wrote his book. But before he wrote his book, he went into the medical journals. And he opened once again his anatomy and physiology book that he hadn't looked in for probably about 20 years. And this is what he found, that these 3 food groups are the essential food groups. Why? Remember, we're going to ask why at every step. Well, fibre sweeps the gastrointestinal tract. And if it doesn't get swept every day, it starts to slow down and not work properly. And if the colon doesn't work, the whole body doesn't work. Plus, it is in the fibre part of food, there's often a concentration of the nutrients. Protein's essential. 50% of the membrane around every cell in the body is protein. Remember yesterday we looked at how the new cell is built up with amino acids? My son, James, he inherited my body type. It's hard to put on weight, and that's bad news for a boy because they want to be big. Well, he's big. I can show you a photo of him. He's got muscles now. How did he do that? He worked very hard. He's got his mother's diligence. He just worked at it and worked at it. But he did something else. I was in his room one day and my foot kicked this big bucket. I said, "What's that?" "Oh, that's my protein powder, Mum." Every bodybuilder, if they want to build up muscle, what have they got to add to their diet? Protein, because it's protein that builds muscle. 50% of the membrane around every cell in the body is fat. Whether you're 100 kilos or 300 kilos, I'm talking about the membrane around your cell. Except for the brain cell, it's 70% fat. And that's little fatty sheath around the tail of the cell, that gets your brain cells up to 70%. In fact, the brain's the fattiest organ in the body. And you know what it loves to eat? Fat. We'll have a look at that. What Atkins found is that the non-essential food group is carbohydrates. This surprised him. Now let me define that. I'm not saying carbohydrates are bad. I'd be a fool to do that. We love them. We enjoy them. They're not bad. They only pose a problem when they're overdone and refined. Got that? Notice the 2 words, overdone, and surely on the high carbohydrate diet, it's a little bit overdone, isn't it? And refined, because most people that are on this diet, it's refined. But you can still overdo the unrefined carbohydrate. So because of that, your carbohydrate part of your meal is your negotiating part of the meal. And the negotiations change depending on your height, depending on your size, depending on your age, depending on your physical and mental output through the day. But probably most, it would depend on your health status. So if someone wanted to lose weight quickly, safely, drastically, what would they severely eliminate? The carbs. Someone wanted to conquer cancer, what would they quite drastically drop? The carbs. Someone wanted to conquer their diabetes, what would they drop? The carbs. Someone wanted to put on weight. This is a trick question. How did James put on weight? You don't increase the carbs, because I don't know anyone that wants to get fat. In fact, what we find, and we found this last week, that our overweight people lost weight. Our underweight people put on a little bit, and our people who were the right weight, they just stayed the same, and they're all eating the same food. The Bible says, prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. People say to me, "Barbara, do you ever step sideways? Do you ever have a little bit of junk?" I said, "Why would I do that?" I feel so good. I sleep well. I like the results. So notice what the Bible says, prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. In other words, do it. And just keep at it. How can you do it, though, on a vegetarian diet? Let's have a look. And we're going to go to Genesis 1:29, where God's telling Adam and Eve what to eat. Because I don't think you can improve on the Garden of Eden diet. Let's have a look at it. In Genesis 1:29, God says, "Behold, I've given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth." We're going to have a look at the food. We're going to have a look at the protein content and the carbohydrate content. God says, "Behold, I've given you every herb-bearing seed." So what's a seed? That would be grain. A seed would be legume, like often called the beans, and a seed would also be seed. So let's look at grain. You've got wheat, rye, barley, oats, amaranth, buckwheat, quinoa, so many, rice, so many grains. They are high in protein, but they are also high in carbohydrates. So let's glance over at our carbohydrate list. How many of these are from grain? So we've got grain, grain, grain. We could say grain, 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 because all the cake section. Grain, grain, grain. The majority of our carbohydrate list is from the grain department. What's a legume? That's your chickpeas, lima beans, black-eyed beans, cannellini beans. Well, you call them black-eyed peas, don't you? Lentils, soy. They are high in protein, but interesting to note that they are medium to low in carbohydrate. Wow. That is interesting, because if you go to the modern Atkins books, which is your keto diet, your ketogenic diet, your paleo diet, they will say don't eat legumes because they have carbohydrates. Well, they do, but not a lot. Only a third what you will find in the grain. What about seed? You've got pumpkin seed, sesame seed, sunflower seed, chia seed, flaxseed or linseed. These seeds are high in protein, but they are quite low in carbohydrate. So God said, behold, I've given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree, in the which of the trees a fruit-bearing seed. What's a fruit-bearing seed? There's your nut. All your nuts come from the fruit of the tree. And we've got, you say pecan, we say pecan, walnuts, cashew, Brazil, hazelnut, almond, so many nuts. And the nuts are high in protein, but quite low in carbohydrate. So to ensure you're getting your three essentials, the fibre, protein and fat, my suggestion is you increase the legume, nut, seed part of the meal and decrease the grain part of the meal. That's an easy way to do it. You can see why Atkins' diet was so popular. You can see why the paleo diet's so popular.